Hello everybody. Today we will learn about active and passive voice. Active and passive voice. Voice is the form of verb which indicates whether subject does something or something has been done to it. There are two types of voice. These are active voice and passive voice. Let us see what is active voice and what is passive voice. Active voice when the subject is the doer or agent of the action. The verb is in the active voice. For example, the boy makes a kite. Here, the boy is the subject and he is the doer. That's why it is called active voice. When the subject is the target or receiver of the action, the verb is said to be in the passive voice. For example, a kite is made by the boy. So here the subject is the receiver of the action. Okay, in active voice, the boy makes a kite. So here boy is the doer. And in this sentence, the boy is the receiver of the action. So where the subject is the doer, it is called active voice, and where the subject is takes the place of receiver, it becomes passive voice. Let us check the word order of active voice and passive voice. How active word order changes in both the voice. In active voice, if we'll take the example, the boy makes a kite. Okay, the word order in active voice is subject, that is the boy, verb, makes, a kite, object. So here, subject, verb, and object. This is the word order for active voice. Now, if we'll take the same sentence for the passive voice, the word order gets changed. What is it? A kite is made by the boy. Here, object takes the place of subject. Then auxiliary verb. Then verb, main verb, third form of or participle form of verb. By is the addition which we use for passive voice, and then subject will take the place of object. So the word order for passive voice is object plus auxiliary verb plus main verb plus by plus subject. Now let us check the change of pronoun. Pronoun in active voice change when we change the active voice into passive voice, the pronoun gets changed accordingly. Okay, if the pronoun is I in active voice, when we change the sentence in passive voice, it becomes me. We in active voice becomes us in passive voice. You in active voice becomes remain you in passive voice. He in active voice becomes him in passive voice. She in active voice becomes her in passive voice. It in active voice remains it in passive voice. They in active voice changes to them in passive voice. Now let us check about interrogative sentence in active voice. If the sentence is in interrogative form in active voice, while changing it into passive voice, we need to take care of certain things. Okay, and the first point is if the primary auxiliary verbs do, does or did appears in the sentence, when we change the same into passive voice, it did not appear. Okay, the primary auxiliary verb do, does or did not appear in passive voice. For example, did she recognize you? This is an interrogative sentence in active voice where did is the primary auxiliary verb. When we change the same into passive voice, did not appear here. It becomes, were you recognized by her? Second point is, if the auxiliary verb has, have and had are used in the passive, but they change their form according to the number and person of the passive subject. For example, have you invited them? Okay, if the question begins with these auxiliary verbs, have you invited them? This is an interrogative sentence. It starts with have. Okay, it starts with auxiliary verb have. When we change it into passive voice, it changed the form according to the number and person of the passive subject. Okay, for example, here, have you invited them? Okay, when we change it into passive voice, it becomes, have they been invited by you? Okay, so here have remains have because the subject is they. Okay, and we know that with you, they, and I, we use have only. Okay, so just because the subject here is they, we will use have here. In the second sentence, have you finished the work? Here, the work is it. Okay, here in active voice, have you finished the work? It becomes has in passive voice. Why? Because the subject in passive voice is, the work, and the work is it. Okay, it is neither they, neither you, okay, nor I. So we will use has because with it we use has. So it changes according to the number and the person of the subject in subject, which we will keep in passive voice. Okay, here it is have is used because you is there, and you here becomes you in passive voice, but it changes the position. Okay, subject of active voice takes the place of passive voice in takes the place of object in passive voice, and the object of active voice takes the place of subject in passive voice. Okay, here, have you invited him? Have you invited him? So here, him will takes the place of subject in passive voice, and with he we use has. Okay, with he, she, it we use has. So just because it is he, we use has here. So ultimately, has, have and had in passive voice used according to the person and number of the subject of passive voice. Now, third point is the question word: when, why, where, how, and what. They do not change their position at the beginning of the sentence while changing it into passive voice. When we change active voice with these words, that is when, why, where, how, and what, when we change this type of questions into passive, the position of this question words remains the same. For example, what did he say? Okay, so when we change this into passive voice, what remains what remains at its place? Okay, that is what. Rest is changed according to the word order we have studied so far. Say, whom did you invite? Here only whom become who and who becomes by whom. The verb will, shall, can or may did not change their position at the beginning of the sentence. Okay, so if the verb will, shall, can or may. So if active voice starts with these words, it did not change its position at the beginning of the sentence. That means it remains the same in passive voice also. Will you help me? Will I be helped by you? Okay, so here will remains at its place. It did not change its position. Rest part is changed according to the word order of active to passive voice. Same with can anyone cure it? Can it be cured by anyone? Will he accept our invitation? Will remain at its position, and rest part is converted or changed into passive voice as per the word order or structure we have studied. Let us talk about changing of active into passive as per the tense. Okay, according to the tense, the auxiliary verbs gets changed, and according to the tense, we have to change the active into passive voice. So you need to have very clarity of identifying the tense of the voice. Once you identify, then it will be easier for you to convert it into passive voice through the structure, which is almost same in all the tense. Okay, let us examine the same. So simple present tense, it has auxiliary verbs in passive voice. If we find a sentence of active voice in simple present tense, the structure of simple present tense is subject plus first form of verb plus object. Okay, to change it into passive voice, the auxiliary verbs which we can use is, am, are. Okay, so let's check out here with the example. He sings a song. So simple present tense. This sentence is simple present tense. Okay, he is subject here. Sings is verb here. A song is object. That is clear for us. Now, if we'll change the same into passive voice, a song, that is object. As per the structure we have studied, the change of active into passive voice, the structure should be subject. The object of active voice will take the place of subject in passive voice. The object, that is a song of active voice, will take the place of subject in passive voice. So here a song, then auxiliary verb is, because it is a song, a singular, we will use is auxiliary verb. Third form of verb, that is participle form of verb, sung by. Okay, by is the structure which we need to use, and then he, that is the subject of active voice, takes the place of object in passive voice, and as per the pronoun table which we had studied, he becomes him. Okay, so I just want to write structure of passive voice once again. That is the subject. Subject is the object of active voice. Then auxiliary verb. Then we will write the auxiliary verb. Then third form of verb. Then it is by, and it becomes, and at the end it becomes object, which is the subject of active voice. Okay, so with the structure which is given here, we change active into passive. So here he is, let's check with the second part, that is he does not sing a song. So here the object of the active voice is a song. It takes the place of subject in passive voice, a song. Auxiliary verb is, because a song is singular, so auxiliary verb we need to use is, and then not, because it is negative sentence, not. Third form of verb, then by, then he, the subject of auxiliary active voice becomes him, as it takes the place of object in passive voice. Similarly, with the question sentence of simple present tense, that is, does he sing a song? As we have already studied that do, did and does will not appear in passive voice, rather it changes with the auxiliary verb is, was, were, according to the tense. So here does becomes is, and rest a song, that is object. Object takes the place of subject, a song, sung. Here auxiliary verbs comes at the beginning, and as it is a question, we will not use auxiliary verb over here. Sung, that is third form of verb, then by, and then him, that is he becomes him in passive voice. Now present continuous tense. In present continuous tense, the auxiliary verb we use for passive voice is am being, is being, and are being. That means am, is and are in the simple present tense will added with being if the sentence, if the active voice is in continuous tense. Okay, so here for example, I am writing a letter. Here this sentence is a present continuous tense. How come we came to know that? As we know, the structure of present continuous tense is subject, auxiliary verb, main verb with ing form, then object. Okay, so it justifies the structure of present continuous tense. So this active voice is in present continuous tense. Now to change this present continuous tense into passive voice, the auxiliary verb we need to use is am being, is being, or are being. Okay, rest the whole structure remains the same. The rule for changing of passive voice remains the change. Only remains the same. Only change is the use of auxiliary verb. Okay, so accordingly, here a letter, that is object, it takes the place of subject in passive voice. A letter, because it is a letter, okay, because it is a letter, we are talking about only one letter. The auxiliary verb or helping verb we use is being, is being. Always remember, for continuous tense, the auxiliary verb is being. Auxiliary verb is, for present tense, it is being. Okay. And as usual, the third form of main verb or participle form of verb, that is write, becomes write, return. And then by, as we know, we have to add by. And then here I changes to me. As per the table we have studied, the pronoun table, we have studied that I becomes me in passive voice. Similarly, with the negative sentence, I am not writing a letter. Here, a letter is not being written by me. Okay, same. Object takes the place of subject, is not being because it is a negative sentence. Return, third form of verb, by, and then I becomes me. Okay, same with the question. That is, am I writing a letter? It becomes, is a letter being written by me? Okay, now let's see about the present perfect tense. In the structure for passive voice, auxiliary verb for passive voice which we need to use is has been and have been. And I hope with my previous PPT, that is tense, you that it was very clear to you that when to use has and when to use have. So here has been and have been to be used in passive voice when changing active into passive. If the active voice is in perfect tense, when we change it into passive voice, the auxiliary verb which we use is has been or have been. Okay, so let's see some examples. That is, she has finished her work. Okay, this is perfect tense. This is perfect tense, present perfect tense. How come we came to know that this is present perfect tense? Because we have the clarity of structure of present perfect tense. That is subject. Okay, subject she, auxiliary verb has. Because it is she, we use has. Okay, third form of the main verb, and then object. So it is present perfect tense. So it is totally present perfect tense. Subject, auxiliary verb has, third form of verb plus object. This is the structure of perfect tense, present perfect tense, as it is in active voice. To change it into passive voice, again, let me tell you that the structure will remain same. The only changes is with the use of auxiliary verb. Okay, auxiliary verb which we use gets changed according to the subject we use in passive voice. And the subject we use in passive voice is the object of the active voice. Okay, object place may whatever is there in object place in active voice, we use it as subject in passive voice. So here her work from the active voice will take the place of subject in passive voice. Okay, her work has been, because it is her, we will use has. Okay, has been. Then same participle form of verb, then by, and then as she is here, as she in the subject place, when we take it or when we write it in the place of object in passive voice, the pronoun she changes to her. Okay, similarly with the negative sentence, she has not finished her work. Her work has not been, okay, has not been finished by her. Has she finished her work? Has her work, okay, as I've already told you, if have is there, it changes according to the subject, according to the number and person of the subject. So here, okay, it is her, and with her we use, with she, he, she, it, we use has. So with her, we use has. Has her work been finished by her? Okay, now let's move ahead with the past tense. Okay, so past tense. For past tense, again, the structure for the passive voice is same. Okay, only the auxiliary verbs gets changed. That is was and were. So let's check with the example. Here, I killed a snake. So this is simple past tense. How come we came to know that it is a simple past tense? Because we are very much aware with the structure of the simple past tense, that is subject plus second form of verb, then object, and it is there in this sentence. So we know that this is simple past tense. To change simple past tense from active voice to passive voice, the auxiliary verb we need to use is was and were. Okay, so here the object of active voice, that is a snake, takes the place of subject in passive voice. Okay, a snake was. Why we use was? Because a snake, it is, we are talking about a single snake. So singular auxiliary verb we use was, and same third form of or participle form of verb plus by plus me. Why me? Because subject of active voice is I and it takes the place of passive voice. In passive voice, the pronoun gets changed. I changes to me. Okay, I becomes me in the place of object. Similarly, with the negative sentence, I did not kill the snake. So here, a snake was not killed by me. Okay, did I kill the snake? The question form. Did I kill a snake? So here, as we know that do, does and did never comes in passive voice. So here, was a snake killed by me? Let us check with past continuous tense. Okay, and the auxiliary verb for past continuous tense is was being and were being. Okay, let us check with examples. So here, he was driving a car. It is it is past continuous tense in active voice. How? See, he, subject, was is the past auxiliary verb for he, the verb with ing, then a car, an object. Okay, so it is past continuous tense. To change this past continuous active voice into passive voice, we will use the same structure, just the change is the auxiliary verb. Okay, so here a car, the object of active voice takes the place of subject in passive voice. A car was being. Was being is the auxiliary verb we need to use in passive voice. Okay, and same third form, participle form of main verb drive becomes driven by, and then he. He, the subject of active voice, he changes, okay, pronoun he changes into him in passive voice. Same with the negative sentence, that is, he was not driving a car. A car was not being, car was not being, same third form of verb, by him. Okay, a car was not being driven by him. For interrogative sentence, was he driving a car? Was a car being driven by him? Was a car being driven by him? Let us check with past perfect tense and the auxiliary verb as usual, it is simple. Okay, it is clear. Only one auxiliary verb we use for past perfect tense, that is had been, while changing it into passive voice. Okay, so in active voice, they had completed the assignment. It is past perfect tense. So because they is the subject, had is the past perfect tense identity, then third form of verb, had completed the assignment. Okay, so this is past perfect tense. To change it into passive voice, first what we have to do, we have to bring object of the active voice in the place of subject in passive voice, that is the assignment. Then we need to use auxiliary verb, that is had been. Then third form of verb or participle form of verb completed, which is already here. Then by, okay, by as a connector, and then they. They in the they in the place of subject in active voice becomes them as per a table of pronoun. They becomes them in passive voice. Okay, similarly with the negative sentence, they had not completed the assignment. The assignment had not been. The assignment had not been completed by them. Okay, had they completed the assignment? Had the assignment been completed by them? Okay, so we have already studied about this use of interrogative auxiliary verbs. Now, let us check with the simple future tense. The auxiliary verb we need to use for simple future tense in passive voices will be. Okay, it should be will be. Now, in active voice, she will buy a car. So it is clear that this is simple future tense as it is subject. We know auxiliary verb will, shall is used for future tense. Then buy a car. Buy is the verb. Okay, first form of verb, and then a car. Okay, to change it into passive voice, in place of subject, the object of active voice takes the place of subject in passive voice. Will be the auxiliary verb which we need to use. We use here, and then participle form of buy, that is bought. Then buy. Then she. She in the active place, the subject of active place will becomes her in passive voice. She becomes her in passive voice. Okay, because it takes the place of object in the passive voice. Similarly, with the negative sentence, she will not buy a car. A car will not be bought. Okay, a car will not be bought by her. Okay, then will she buy a car? As we know that will remains at its place. Will a car be bought by her? Will a car be bought by her? So we change from here. Okay, and then will comes remains at the beginning of the passive voice also. So it is will a car be bought by her. Here is the total table or overall table of passive forms of active and passive verb forms. Okay, in simple present tense, the active will have this structure, and in passive, we will change it like this, that is subject, the auxiliary verb is MR, then third form of verb by object. Similarly, for continuous tense, present continuous tense, subject plus am is are being. Am being, is being, are being plus third form of verb, then by, then object. For present perfect tense, subject plus has been, have been, plus third form of verb by and then object. For simple past, it is subject, was, were, auxiliary verb was, verb, then third form of verb by an object. Okay, for past continuous tense, subject, was, being, were being, plus third form of verb by an object. In past perfect tense, subject, had been, plus third form of verb plus by plus object. In simple future, it is subject, will, shall, be, third form of verb by an object. So, this you need to keep it in your mind while changing active into passive voice. First of all, you should have the quality to, you should have ability to identify the tense of the active voice. Then you can change easily with the help of the structure. You can easily change it into passive voice. Let us talk about passive voice of imperative sentences. Sometimes you find imperative sentence. So to change imperative sentence of active voice into passive voice, the word we use at the beginning of the sentence is let. Okay, we use let and auxiliary verb is be. Okay, auxiliary verb we use is be. So the structure for changing imperative active sentence into passive voice is let at the beginning of the sentence, then object of the active voice, then be, auxiliary verb be, and then third form of verb, or we can say past participle form of verb. Okay, let's check out with the example. Here, open the door. So open is the verb here. Open is the verb and the door is the object here. So to change it into passive voice, just verify it with the structure I have given you. Okay, so let at the beginning of the sentence, we will use let. The door, object of the active voice, the door, object. Okay, then be. Okay, be as an auxiliary verb. And then participle form of open, that is opened. Okay, so ultimately the sentence becomes let the door be opened. Similarly, in the sentence complete the work, let the work be completed. Help the poor, let the poor be helped. Speak the truth, let the truth be spoken. Okay, so only you have to keep this in your mind if you find an imperative sentence to change it into passive voice. So that's all from active and passive voice. Thank you all.